The words, sharp and deliberate, sliced through the convivial hum of Thanksgiving dinner, pinning me in place. "Linda," my mother declared, her gaze unwavering as it found mine across the laden table, "has always been the black sheep of this family." I was 32, a financial analyst in Columbus, Ohio, and that pronouncement, meant to define me, was instead the match that lit a fuse. What unfolded next shocked everyone, especially me, because for years I had been the silent architect of our family's financial survival. They called me the black sheep, but they didn't know the shepherd was me, quietly shoring up foundations while they built dreams on borrowed time. This is a story of how standing up for myself meant revealing a truth so profound, it fractured our world and remade my own. The shadow of Marcus stretched long and wide across my childhood, an oppressive presence in our modest 3-bedroom house on Maple Street. 3 years my senior, he possessed a magnetic charisma, drawing people to him like moths to a flame. He was the star quarterback, the golden boy, the center of every room he entered. My parents' cheers, a deafening roar from the bleachers on countless Friday nights, were reserved for him. Mom, his jersey number painted proudly on her cheek, Dad, pacing the sidelines as if coaching the game himself. And me, I sat beneath the stadium lights, trying to finish my advanced placement assignments, the unspoken question a constant hum in my ears. Why can't you be more like your brother? His C+ and a winning touchdown earned celebratory dinners. My straight A's and a spot on the debate team garnered a distracted, "That's nice, honey." The differences between us deepened as we aged. Marcus thrived in the chaotic energy of social gatherings. I found solace in books, in quiet thought, in the meticulous construction of an idea before it left my lips. Where he saw an audience, I found peace in solitude. Where he drew energy from crowds, I sought the quiet wisdom of libraries. The validation I yearned for never came from within those walls. As high school valedictorian, I crafted a speech weeks in the making, a testament to perseverance. The night before graduation, my parents were preoccupied with Marcus's photo opportunities. Mom's only advice to me: "Just don't talk too long, Linda. People want to get to the reception." I delivered my carefully wrought words to a sea of distracted faces, whispers, and glowing phone screens. Polite applause. 20 minutes later, when Marcus's name was called, our family section erupted in a cacophony of cheers and whistles, a stark and painful lesson in my place in their hierarchy. College planning revealed the chasm between us even further. Marcus, partial football scholarship in hand, became the epicenter of future plans. Dorm room essentials, meal plans, tailgating season, his path was paved with excited anticipation. My own aspirations for a 4-year university were met with a paternal lecture. "Community college is a smart financial choice, Linda. You can get your basics done for half the price." What he didn't say, but what I understood with chilling clarity, was that there wasn't money for both of us. So, while Marcus embarked on his grand adventure in Columbus, armed with a new laptop, a mini fridge, and enough spending money to last a semester, I quietly enrolled at the local community college, taking a job at the campus bookstore to cover textbooks and gas. It was a grind, but in that quiet struggle, a new determination bloomed. Community college may not have had the prestige, but I would wring every opportunity from it. I joined the Honor Society, tutored mathematics, and maintained a perfect 4.0 GPA. The bookstore became my unexpected sanctuary. Mrs. Peterson, the manager, a woman with a keen business mind, took me under her wing. She taught me about inventory, profit margins, accounting, the language of numbers I would come to master. More profoundly, she saw potential in me that my own family had consistently overlooked. "You have a natural head for numbers, Linda," she'd tell me, her words planting a seed that would change my entire life trajectory. Until then, teaching had seemed my safe, practical path. But Mrs. Peterson's insight ignited a different fire. Meanwhile, Marcus was living it up at Ohio State, his social media a parade of parties and football games. His calls home were less about connection and more about cash. "The meal plan doesn't cover everything," he'd explain. "Textbooks are way more expensive." Dad would grumble, but the money always appeared. During my second year, armed with savings from the bookstore and academic scholarships, I transferred to a prestigious 4-year university with an excellent business program. For the first time, I felt a deep, quiet pride in something I had achieved entirely on my own. University life was a revelation. I discovered a real talent for financial analysis, seeing stories hidden in balance sheets, becoming fluent in the silent language of numbers. An internship at a regional investment firm followed, and for 8 hours a day, I wasn't the overlooked younger sibling. I was Linda, the intern, with a sharp analytical mind and an unyielding work ethic. It was around this time that the foundations beneath my family began to crack. Dad's construction business faltered, then crumbled, leaving a gaping wound in our family's finances. Mom's voice, during our weekly calls, grew thin with a stress she tried to hide behind updates on Marcus's latest, often fleeting achievements. "Your brother is thinking about changing his major again," she'd say, sidestepping the truth that he was in his 5th year with no graduation date in sight. Then came the first tearful call from Mom. "Honey, I hate to ask, but we're having trouble with the mortgage this month. Your father's work and all the expenses for Marcus's education." Her voice trailed off, thick with embarrassment. Without a second thought, I transferred $500. Money I'd saved for my own apartment deposit, but family came first, didn't it? "Don't worry about paying me back," I'd said. "I'm just glad I can help." That call was a whisper that became a roar. Over the next several years, a pattern emerged. Another crisis, another emergency, another situation where my family needed financial salvation. And each time, I stepped in, no questions asked. After graduation, the investment firm offered me a full-time position. My salary was more than I'd ever dreamed. I found a small apartment downtown, built a professional wardrobe, and felt for the first time that I was building the independent life I had always craved. Marcus, meanwhile, had dropped out of Ohio State. The official story, he needed to find himself. The reality, his grades plummeted, probation loomed. He moved back into his childhood bedroom, a 24-year-old adrift. He slept until noon, played video games, went out with friends. When Dad suggested a job, Marcus claimed he was networking, searching for the right opportunity. Then, Dad's business failed completely. A client went bankrupt, leaving him with $30,000 in unpaid invoices and no way to recover the money. He had to let go of his 2 employees and sell most of his equipment just to pay outstanding debts. The phone call came on a Tuesday evening. Mom was crying before she even said hello. "Linda, we don't know what we're going to do. The bank is talking about foreclosure, and your father is too proud to ask for help, but I don't see any other choice." $3,000, she choked out. "But honey, we can't ask you to." "You're not asking. I'm offering." That night, $3,000, nearly 2 months of my after-tax income, vanished from my account into theirs. But that was just the beginning. Car repairs for Dad's truck, Mom's medical bills, utility payments when disconnection loomed, groceries when the fridge was bare. Each time, Mom's voice, tearful and profoundly apologetic. Each time, my reassurance. Family helps family. What I didn't grasp then was how my silent contributions were reshaping my family's perception of me. Marcus met Sarah, a dental hygienist he'd known from high school. Their relationship moved swiftly to engagement. I contributed $600 for the party. The wedding became a family obsession. Sarah dreamed big. Mom, despite their limited resources, was determined. "It's important to start a marriage the right way," she'd insisted when I questioned the wisdom of their extravagance. The budget ballooned from $5,000 to $8,000, then $12,000. Each increase, I covered the difference. The venue, the photographer, the flowers, the open bar Marcus insisted was essential. I told myself it was a one-time expense, a launch pad for my brother's new life. But a growing, unnamed resentment festered within me. 3 months after the wedding, Sarah was pregnant. Joy turned to panic when complications led to expensive medical bills their insurance wouldn't fully cover. This time, Marcus called, his voice laced with manufactured desperation. "Linda, I know we've asked for so much, but Sarah needs this specialized treatment, and we're looking at $3,000 out of pocket. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't for the baby." As my financial contributions deepened, something else shifted. The dynamics at family gatherings changed, isolating me. What I thought would earn me appreciation instead created a strange distance. Conversations now included subtle criticisms of my lifestyle. Linda works so much, Mom would tell relatives, as if my success was a sickness. We worry she's becoming too focused on money and not enough on relationships. The irony was a physical blow. I, sacrificing my own financial security, branded as someone who cared too much about money. My suggestions about Marcus and Sarah's future were dismissed as too practical. At one memorable dinner, Uncle Bob joked I was the corporate robot. Everyone laughed, even my parents. At least someone in this family knows how to make money, Aunt Helen added, a backhanded compliment that felt like another nail in my coffin of belonging. Marcus, meanwhile, struggled to hold a job. His charisma got him through interviews, but the daily grind of responsibility, consistency, and deadlines eluded him. 3 jobs in his first year of marriage, each ending with a tale of unreasonable bosses or workplace politics. Each job loss triggered another financial crisis for him and Sarah, another phone call to me. I became my brother's unwitting unemployment fund, covering rent, car payments, basic expenses while he looked for the next opportunity. Then came Tom, a software engineer, a witty conversationalist, a refreshing perspective on life outside the family drama. We started dating, and for the first time in years, I had a part of my life untouched by the constant crisis. Tom was puzzled by the sheer volume of my financial support. "It's generous," he'd said one evening, after I'd canceled dinner plans for another family emergency, "but it seems like they've become pretty dependent on your assistance." His observation stung because it was accurate. Emergency help had become routine support, my contributions a line item in their budget, absolving them of difficult decisions. But when I tried to articulate this, Mom's voice, steeped in guilt, would cut me off. "We're family, Linda. I'm sorry you see it as a burden." The guilt was a heavy cloak, smothering my nascent rebellion. How could I not help these people I loved, who had raised me? What I couldn't see was how this dynamic was eroding my worth in their eyes. I was no longer a daughter or a sister, but the family ATM. My opinions diminished, my value reduced to my financial contributions. My own dreams, secondary to their immediate needs. The breaking point arrived with a crash. Marcus, driving under the influence, totaled Mom's car. He was miraculously unharmed, but the car was gone and legal fees loomed. His drinking, an open secret, was now undeniable. Yet, the family's focus remained solely on the financial consequences. How would Mom get to work? Who would pay Marcus's legal fees? Once again, I found myself stepping in, helping Mom buy a used car, contributing to Marcus's legal defense. But this time, something fundamental shifted within me. My help wasn't helping, it was enabling. The Thanksgiving that would change everything started like any other family gathering. I arrived at my parents' house, expensive wine in hand, thoughtful gifts for everyone, my usual readiness to smooth over any awkwardness with my financial contributions. Marcus was already there, hungover and disheveled on the living room couch, back home after his marriage to Sarah had dissolved. The official story, taking some time apart. My mother's worried phone calls had painted a clearer picture. Sarah had finally tired of his drinking and unreliability. As relatives arrived, the familiar patterns emerged. Everyone wanted to hear about Marcus's job prospects, offering platitudes about his potential. My own updates, a promotion at work, a planned vacation, were met with polite interest, quickly redirected. Uncle Bob joked about me climbing the corporate ladder. Cousin Jennifer asked why I traveled alone when I was going to settle down like normal people. At 32, my single status had become a family concern. Never mind my financial independence, my career success, my general happiness. Without a ring and children, something, apparently, was wrong. "We just worry you're missing out on what's really important," Aunt Helen explained during appetizers. "Career success is nice, but family is what really matters in the end." I wanted to scream that I had been prioritizing family for years, just in a way they refused to acknowledge. Every month, for 4 years, money had flowed from my account to theirs. Every crisis, solved by my assistance. Every celebration, enhanced by my contributions. Yet, none of that counted as putting family first. As we sat down for dinner, the conversation, inevitably, turned to Marcus. Mom gave a detailed, sanitized update about his job search, emphasizing his hard work. She neglected to mention his last job loss due to showing up drunk, or that his current search consisted mainly of scrolling online listings from the couch. She also didn't mention I'd been covering his car insurance and cell phone for 2 months. "We're just asking everyone to keep Marcus in your prayers," Mom concluded, her gaze sweeping the table. "He's going through such a difficult time." The irony was almost unbearable. My mother, asking for prayers for Marcus, while I sat there, silently funding his basic living expenses. My tangible support was invisible, unmentionable. After dinner, gathered for dessert, the conversation took an even more uncomfortable turn. Relatives began sharing childhood memories, carefully constructing a narrative that painted Marcus as the warm, personable, good-hearted family member, and me as the distant, ambitious one. Linda was always so serious, Aunt Helen remembered, more interested in her books. Marcus, on the other hand, Uncle Bob added, could make friends with anyone. Such a good heart, always thinking about other people. I ate my pie, listening to this warped reality. Marcus, dependent on me for years, was the selfless one. I, who had quietly supported everyone, was the selfish recluse. Then came the moment that would change everything between my family and me forever. Mom stood, holding her coffee cup, her face set in the familiar expression of an impending, important announcement. "You know," she began, her voice carrying easily across the quiet room, "I've been thinking a lot lately about how different my children are." She paused, took a sip, completely unaware she was about to detonate a bomb. "Marcus has always been the heart of this family," she continued, gesturing towards my brother. "He's warm. He's caring. He thinks about other people before himself. He's everything we could have wanted in a son." Relatives nodded, smiling at Marcus. My stomach tightened. I knew where this was going. "Linda, on the other hand," Mom said, turning to look directly at me, "has always been the black sheep of this family." The words hit me like a physical blow. My face flushed hot, my breath caught in my throat. Around the room, I saw thoughtful nods, as if she had merely articulated a common, unspoken truth. "She's just so different from the rest of us," Mom continued, oblivious to my humiliation. "So cold and money-focused. She doesn't understand what family really means." The irony was so overwhelming, a hysterical laugh almost escaped me. I, the quiet financial architect of their lives, called cold and money-focused, someone who didn't understand family. The woman funding their mortgage, covering their emergencies, bankrolling their celebrations, was being called cold. But in that moment, something shifted. Not the usual shame or hurt, but a clean, clear fury cutting through years of guilt and confusion. I stood up slowly, deliberately placing my dessert plate on the coffee table. The room fell silent, every eye fixed on me, likely expecting tears, a retreat, an apology. Instead, I met my mother's gaze and smiled. It wasn't friendly. It wasn't nervous. It was the smile of someone who had finally reached their breaking point, about to unleash a truth that would shock them all. "Perfect," I said, my voice unervingly calm, despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "Then stop using my money to stay afloat." The silence that followed was a physical entity, suffocating the air. Mom's coffee cup, suspended midway to her lips, seemed frozen in time. Around the room, relatives stared, bewildered. The silence stretched, for what felt like hours, though it was only seconds. I saw the wheels turn in Mom's head, trying to process, to respond. Her mouth opened, closed, no words coming out. "What are you talking about?" she finally managed, her voice a fragile whisper. I pulled out my phone, its screen a blinding beacon in the stunned room. For years, I had kept meticulous records, not as a weapon, but as a silent accounting of my love. Now, it was a ledger of betrayal. "I'm talking about the $1,500 I transfer to your checking account every month for your mortgage payment," I began, my finger tracing lines of truth on the screen. "The $8,000 I contributed to Marcus's wedding. The $3,000 when Dad's business failed. The $1,200 for Mom's medical bills." Faces around the room drained of color, confusion giving way to shock. Uncle Bob leaned forward, mouth agape. Aunt Helen's cup clattered. "Linda, please," Mom whispered a plea. "This isn't the time or place." "You made it the time and place." I roared, the suppressed anger of decades finally unleashed. You stood here and called me the black sheep, said I don't understand family. So let's talk about what family really means. I continued, a litany of dates and figures, each one a hammer blow to their carefully constructed illusions. September 15th, for Marcus's car repairs. October 3rd, $500 for utilities when you were behind. November 20th, $800 for groceries and household expenses. Marcus, crimson with shame, stared at the floor. I realized some of these contributions had likely been presented to him as gifts from our parents, not direct withdrawals from my bank account. Over the past 4 years, I declared, my voice trembling with the sheer weight of it, I have contributed over $47,000 to this family's expenses. $47,000, while listening to lectures about how I don't care about family and only focus on money. Cousin Jennifer shook her head in disbelief. Linda, we had no idea, she said softly. Of course you didn't, I replied, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Because God forbid anyone should know that the black sheep was the one keeping this family financially afloat. It's so much easier to maintain the narrative that Marcus is the caring one and I'm the selfish career woman. I looked directly at Marcus, forcing his gaze. Tell them about your drinking problem, Marcus. Tell them about how you lost your last job for showing up drunk. Tell them about how Sarah left because she got tired of supporting a grown man who couldn't handle basic responsibilities. Linda, stop, Mom said, her voice breaking. Why should I stop? I demanded. You didn't stop when you decided to humiliate me in front of everyone. You didn't think about stopping when you called me cold and money-focused, while I've been literally funding your lives for years. I turned to address the room full of relatives, so quick to judge me and praise Marcus. You want to know what the real difference between Marcus and me is? I take responsibility for my life and my choices. I work hard. I pay my bills. And when my family needs help, I provide it without being asked and without expecting recognition. Marcus, on the other hand, is a grown man who has never successfully supported himself. His idea of taking care of family is letting his little sister pay for everything while he gets praised for his good heart. The truth was spilling out of me like water from a broken dam. Years of suppressed resentment, months of swallowed criticism, and decades of being misunderstood, all coming to the surface at once. So if being responsible makes me the black sheep, I said, looking around the room at all the shocked faces, then I'm proud to be different from all of you. I wasn't finished. 4 years of frustration had built to this moment, and I would ensure everything that needed to be said was said. I turned back to my phone, reading off more specific examples, each one landing like another blow to my family's carefully constructed narrative. Let me tell you about some of the other ways this black sheep has supported her family, I continued, my voice steady and clear. Last Christmas, when everyone was praising Marcus for his thoughtful gifts, I was the one who paid for them. The watch he gave Dad, the necklace he got Mom, the toys for Cousin Amy's kids. $600 charged to my credit card. Aunt Helen gasped audibly. Uncle Bob stared at Marcus with a completely different expression. And let's talk about this house, I said, gesturing around my parents' living room. The same house where I'm being called the black sheep while sitting at a table I helped pay for when you needed a new roof last spring. Where did the $3,000 down payment come from when the furnace died in January? Who covered the emergency repair? Dad was slumped in his chair, looking older than I had ever seen him. For the first time, he spoke. Linda, we're grateful for everything you've done. But are you? I interrupted, because gratitude usually doesn't come with public humiliation. Gratitude doesn't involve characterizing the person who's been supporting you as cold and money-focused. I turned to Marcus, who was finally looking at me, though his eyes were filled with shame rather than the usual entitlement. And you, I said, pointing directly at him. You've been living rent-free in this house for months. Eating food I helped pay for. Driving a car I helped repair. Using utilities I helped cover. And not once have you said thank you. Not once have you acknowledged where any of it comes from. Instead, you sit there while everyone talks about what a good heart you have and how much potential you're wasting. You know what? You're actually wasting my money, my time, my energy, my willingness to keep pretending that this family dynamic is normal or healthy. I could see tears forming in Mom's eyes, but I felt no sympathy. She had created this situation with her public declaration, and now she was going to hear the complete truth about the family finances she had been hiding from everyone. "Here's what's going to happen," I announced, addressing the entire room. "Effective immediately, the Bank of Linda is permanently closed. No more mortgage assistance. No more emergency funds. No more covering Marcus's basic living expenses while he finds himself." The silence was deafening. I could practically hear the gears turning in everyone's heads as they processed what this would mean. "But Linda," Mom started, her voice desperate. "Without my help," I finished. "Then maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to publicly humiliate the person who's been keeping you afloat." I grabbed my purse and jacket from the chair where I had left them hours earlier, a beautiful daughter ready to contribute to another family celebration. "I'm done being the black sheep," I said, looking around the room one final time. "I'm done being the family member who doesn't understand what family means. I'm done funding a group of people who think so little of me that they'll insult me in front of everyone while spending my money." As I headed toward the door, I turned back to deliver one final message. "You want to know what the real difference is between Marcus and me? I'm going to walk out of here tonight and go build a life surrounded by people who actually value me. Marcus is going to stay here and figure out what it's like to be an adult without his little sister's financial support." I walked out the door, leaving my entire extended family in stunned silence, probably wondering how the evening had gone from a normal Thanksgiving dinner to the complete destruction of our family's financial arrangement. The weeks that followed my Thanksgiving confrontation were unlike anything I had ever experienced. For the first time in 4 years, my phone wasn't ringing constantly with requests for financial help. For the first time since I had started my career, my paycheck was actually mine to spend as I chose. The silence from my family was initially overwhelming. I had become so accustomed to being needed, even if that need came with criticism and disrespect, that the sudden absence of crisis phone calls left me feeling strangely empty. But as the days passed, that emptiness was replaced by something I hadn't felt in years: freedom. Mom called first, exactly 6 days after Thanksgiving. Her voice was small and apologetic, completely different from the confident tone she had used while humiliating me. "Linda, honey, we need to talk," she began. "I think there were some misunderstandings at dinner, and we should clear the air." "There weren't any misunderstandings, Mom," I replied calmly. "You called me the black sheep of the family in front of everyone, and I told you exactly how I felt about that. Everything is perfectly clear. But sweetheart, you know we love you. You know we appreciate everything you've done for us. I just think sometimes you take things the wrong way." The conversation continued for 20 minutes, Mom alternating between apologizing for hurting my feelings and trying to minimize what had actually happened. She kept referring to my reaction as an over-response, suggesting I had misinterpreted her comments. What she didn't do was acknowledge the reality of how dependent they had become on my financial support, or recognize that calling me cold and money-focused while literally living off my money was deeply hypocritical. Marcus's approach was completely different. His phone calls were angry and accusatory, as if I had somehow betrayed him by revealing the truth about our family's finances. "You didn't have to embarrass me in front of everyone," he said during one particularly heated conversation. "You could have talked to me privately if you had a problem with how things were going." "I tried talking to you privately for months," I replied. "I tried suggesting that maybe you should look into treatment for your drinking. I tried encouraging you to find steady employment. I tried having reasonable conversations about boundaries and expectations. None of that worked. So you decided to humiliate me instead," he retorted. The lack of self-awareness was staggering. Marcus genuinely seemed to believe that he was the victim in this situation, that my decision to stop funding his lifestyle was somehow an attack on him personally. During this same period, something wonderful was happening in other areas of my life. Tom and I were spending more time together, and without the constant stress of family financial crises, I was able to be more present in our relationship. We took weekend trips I didn't have to cancel for emergencies. We made dinner plans that didn't get interrupted by desperate phone calls. "You seem different," Tom observed one evening. "More relaxed, more yourself." He was right. 4 years, I had been carrying the weight of my family's financial problems on my shoulders, and I hadn't realized how much that burden was affecting every other aspect of my life. Without that constant stress, I felt lighter, more confident, more able to focus on my own goals and dreams. At work, my productivity increased dramatically. My supervisor noticed the change and began discussing opportunities for advancement I had never considered possible. But the most significant change was in how I viewed myself. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't defining my worth by how much I could give to other people. I wasn't measuring my value by my ability to solve everyone else's problems. I was learning to appreciate my own achievements and to prioritize my own happiness. 3 months after Thanksgiving, I received a call that changed everything. Mom was crying, but this time it wasn't the manipulative tears I had grown accustomed to. These were tears of genuine desperation. "Linda, we're going to lose the house," she said. "We can't make the mortgage payments without your help, and the bank has started foreclosure proceedings. Your father is talking about declaring bankruptcy." For a moment, I felt the familiar pull of guilt and responsibility. These were my parents, the people who had raised me, and they were facing a real crisis. Every instinct I had developed over the past 4 years was telling me to step in and fix the problem. But then I remembered the feeling of sitting in that living room, being called the black sheep while surrounded by people who had no idea how much I had sacrificed for my family. I remembered the years of criticism disguised as concern, the constant implications that something was wrong with me for being successful and independent. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and I meant it. "But this is exactly the kind of situation that adults have to figure out for themselves. But Linda, we're your family. We need you. You needed me for 4 years. And during that entire time, I was made to feel like an outsider in my own family. You can't have it both ways, Mom. You can't call me the black sheep and then expect me to act like a devoted daughter when it's convenient for you." The conversation with Mom that day marked the beginning of the most difficult period of this entire experience, but also the most important. Over the next several months, my family was forced to confront the reality of their financial situation without my safety net, and the results were both painful and ultimately necessary. Dad swallowed his pride and took a job working for another construction company. The pay was lower, but it was steady income with benefits. More importantly, it was a job he could actually do instead of relying on my contributions to make up the difference between his declining business income and their expenses. Mom picked up additional hours at the department store where she had been working part-time. She also started looking seriously at their monthly budget, cutting expenses that had seemed necessary when they had my financial support, but were actually luxuries they couldn't afford. Most significantly, they downsized their living situation. The 4-bedroom house, where I had grown up, was too expensive for them to maintain on their actual income, and without my help, they couldn't pretend otherwise. They sold it and moved into a smaller apartment that they could afford with their combined salaries. Marcus faced the most dramatic changes. Without free housing and my financial support, he was forced to confront his drinking problem and his pattern of avoiding responsibility. The transition wasn't smooth. He went through several more job losses and had to move in with a friend when our parents downsized. But something interesting happened around month 6 of this new arrangement. Marcus got into a treatment program and started taking his sobriety seriously. He found a job at a warehouse that wasn't glamorous, but provided steady income and health insurance. For the first time in years, he was supporting himself. During this period, I maintained minimal contact with my family. I wasn't angry anymore, but I also wasn't ready to rebuild relationships that had been based on financial dependency and mutual resentment. I needed space to figure out who I was when I wasn't constantly trying to rescue everyone else. Tom and I were growing closer, and he helped me understand something important about healthy relationships. People who really love you don't make you choose between being yourself and being accepted, he said one evening as we discussed my family situation. They love you because of who you are, not despite it. That observation helped me realize something crucial about my family dynamics. For years, I had been trying to earn love and acceptance by being useful, by solving problems, by making myself indispensable. But that kind of love comes with conditions, and those conditions can change whenever it's convenient for the other person. Real love, the kind Tom was showing me, and the kind I was learning to show myself, doesn't require you to sacrifice your own well-being to prove your worth. Real love appreciates your contributions without demanding them. Real love doesn't call you names and then expect you to keep providing support. 8 months after my Thanksgiving confrontation, I received a very different kind of phone call from Mom. Her voice was calm, not desperate. She wasn't calling to ask for money or to guilt me into resuming my financial support. "Linda, I want you to know that your father and I have been doing a lot of thinking about what happened at Thanksgiving and about the years leading up to that evening," she said. "We realize that we took advantage of your generosity and we failed to show you the appreciation and respect you deserved. It was the first real apology I had received from anyone in my family, and it caught me completely off guard. We're managing on our own now," she continued. "It's been difficult, but we're making it work. Marcus is doing better, too. He's been sober for 4 months, and he's keeping his job. I think maybe we all needed to learn how to take care of ourselves instead of depending on you to solve our problems." The conversation lasted for over an hour, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was talking to my mother rather than to someone who saw me primarily as a financial resource. She asked about my work, my relationship with Tom, my plans for the future. She listened to my answers without trying to redirect the conversation back to family problems or needs. Most importantly, she acknowledged something that I had never expected to hear from her. "You were never the black sheep, Linda. You were the strongest one, and instead of celebrating that, we resented it. We made you feel like something was wrong with you for being successful and independent when we should have been proud of the woman you became." A full year after that life-changing Thanksgiving dinner, I found myself in a completely different place, both literally and emotionally. Tom and I had moved in together, and I was learning what it felt like to be in a relationship built on mutual respect and genuine affection rather than obligation and guilt. My career had flourished without the constant distraction of family financial crises. I had been promoted to senior analyst and was working on some of the most challenging and interesting projects of my career. More importantly, I was able to enjoy my success without feeling guilty about it or defensive about my choices. The relationship with my family had slowly begun to rebuild, but on completely different terms. We talked regularly now, but the conversations were about genuine interest in each other's lives, rather than requests for help or criticism disguised as concern. For holidays or special occasions, I was included as a valued family member rather than treated as an outsider who happened to be useful. Marcus and I had the most difficult relationship to repair, but even that had improved significantly. His sobriety had given him a clarity about our family dynamics that he had never had before, and he eventually called to apologize for the years of taking my support for granted. "I never said thank you," he admitted during one particularly honest conversation. "Not once in 4 years did I acknowledge what you were doing for me. I was so caught up in feeling sorry for myself that I couldn't see how much you were sacrificing to help me." The apology meant a lot, but what meant even more was seeing him actually take responsibility for his own life. He was still working at the warehouse, but he had been promoted to a supervisory position. He was dating someone new, a woman who appreciated his efforts to stay sober and build a stable life. For the first time since high school, Marcus was someone I could actually respect. Dad had perhaps changed the most of anyone. Working for someone else instead of trying to run his own business had been humbling, but it had also relieved him of enormous stress. He seemed healthier and happier than he had in years, and he had developed a new appreciation for the security that comes with steady employment and living within your means. "I used to think that asking for help meant I was failing," he told me during one of our monthly dinner visits. "But I realize now that the real failure was letting my pride put so much pressure on you. You shouldn't have had to carry the burden of keeping this family afloat." Mom had returned to school to get her certification as a medical assistant, and she was working at a doctor's office where she felt valued and productive. The financial stress that had dominated our family life for years was gone, replaced by the satisfaction that comes from being self-sufficient. But the most important change was in how I viewed myself and my relationships. I had learned to set boundaries without feeling guilty about them. I had discovered that real love doesn't require constant sacrifice to maintain. I had found the confidence to prioritize my own happiness without apologizing for it. Tom proposed on a Saturday morning in our kitchen while we were making breakfast and planning our weekend. It wasn't a grand gesture or a public display, just a quiet moment between two people who had found something genuine together. "I love that you know who you are," he said as he slipped the ring onto my finger. "I love that you stand up for yourself. I love that you're strong enough to walk away from people who don't treat you well, even when those people are family." Looking back on that Thanksgiving confrontation, I realized that it had been the most important moment of my adult life, even though it had felt like everything was falling apart at the time. Sometimes you have to be willing to lose everything you think you want in order to find what you actually need. I had spent years trying to earn my family's love and acceptance by being useful, by solving their problems, by making myself indispensable. But that kind of relationship isn't sustainable, and it isn't healthy for anyone involved. The real lesson wasn't about money or family dynamics or setting boundaries, although all of those things were important. The real lesson was about self-respect and the courage to demand that the people in your life treat you with the same consideration you show them. Being called the black sheep had hurt because it confirmed my deepest fear that I didn't really belong in my own family. But what I learned was that belonging isn't something you earn by changing yourself to fit other people's expectations. Belonging is something you create by finding people who appreciate you for who you actually are. Today, I have relationships built on mutual respect rather than financial dependency. I have a career that challenges and fulfills me. I have a partner who loves me for my strength rather than resenting me for it. And I have a family that finally understands the difference between taking care of each other and taking advantage of each other. The black sheep label that once hurt so much has become a source of pride. If being different from people who expect others to fund their irresponsibility makes me the black sheep, then I'm exactly where I belong.